folks.
Good morning.
It is summer here in Vermont. Air conditioners are going in the church, so getting a little breeze over here.
Not hearing your mic.
Not hearing your mic. Here we go. Good morning, folks. Oh, it's summer here in Vermont. Air conditioners are going. Getting a breeze, so my hair is going more than crazy normal. That's the air conditioner. And I've been telling people all week that I have all my shots from my veterinarian, so I'm going to take my mask off. What else? Oh, if you're wondering who this person is, who has the same voice as the other guy, but doesn't look like the other guy because the hair is gone, the beard is gone. It's me. I just had to go back to work. And here I am. So, we've been talking about flying by. No connection to the fact I've been training all week in the simulator to get requalified to fly. But flying by different worldviews, different religions, and trying to think how would we relate to them. Sure, everybody is a person. Everybody has problems, struggles, so we can always resonate with somebody at that level, connect to them. I find this is well done by simply listening when they talk. I mean, totally listening. I know it's very, very tempting in Christianity to be thinking while someone else is talking how you're going to respond and crush their little view, just decimate them. Oh, they want to become a Christian then. No. Remember, Scripture says to treat people with gentleness and reverence. Yet it says to pull down strongholds. That means ideas. But to do it differently. We are not to shout and yell, thinking that'll make somebody believe what we believe. And incidentally, when they say, well, that's what you believe. Well, yes, but that doesn't change the fact that 2 plus 2 equals 4. So to say, well, you believe it's 4, does that change? Does my belief change whether 2 plus 2 equals 4? No. So we're looking for truth. Truth. And I've said before, quoting my friend Plato, that truth is defined as that which best emulates reality. And this is going to come up in some of these worldviews as far as reality. So we've talked about modernism, postmodernism, existentialism, things, worldviews that you may not quite be aware of, but they are definitely players in cultural thinking. In fact, I would say that many movies of Hollywood have a particular worldview. In particular, I'm thinking the Matrix series. It's kind of funny because now that can be said to be, oh yeah, those movies of your generation. Like my kids said, the original Star Wars that came out, we didn't like them. We liked the originals. They meant the ones that came out in their time, not the old Star Wars. So the Matrix, while it may be from my generation, still, they picked out many different worldviews and meshed them together to present something alluring and fascinating, but still a bunch meshed together. And when you pick and choose, you get to present the good parts. But if you present the total part of a worldview, then they contradict. But let's move on to secular humanism. Secular humanism. The church right away, the title secular. Ooh, that must be bad. Humanism. Oh, that's bad too. Well, let's look. Let's see. So it's he says, from this book I take it from. It's a pretty new way of thinking, but its roots go all the way back to Greece and China. People look to humans rather than to gods to solve their problems. That's one of his opening statements in secular humanism. But as always, I have a little caveat. Ancient Greece was not as atheistic as sometimes that may sound or some may say. Socrates and Plato were very respectful of the god. In fact, Plato depicted God, who was referring to Zeus, as perfect, completely perfect, above lying. It's not the image of the Greek gods like I got in high school mythology, that they're just basically lustful humans, or in these movies that Zeus transforms into a human to take advantage of somebody else's wife. No, so Plato depicted the gods in this realm of perfection. But in secular humanism, they don't even look to mythological gods, they look to no gods. And then he says, during the Dark Ages, if you wanted to believe something that went against the church, you suffered for it. Yeah, no. The whole Galileo thing is not accurately described. Did the church, the established church, disagree profoundly with Galileo? Yes. Was it because the Bible says the earth is in the center of the universe and we just won't accept science? No, that's not really true. You see, Galileo was rebuffed mostly by his fellow scientists because they ascribed to a Platonic worldview. And in that worldview, the heavens were considered perfect. So therefore, all the planets rotated in a perfect circle. We know that's not true. The earth had to be a center. So it wasn't just religion, as Stephen Hawkins says in his book, The Grand Design. It wasn't just a church being mean to you scientists. We refuse to face reality. No, it was a worldview, and that worldview happened to mitigate into the church. So no wonder. But, so the issue comes up, and I don't know what Professor Lee holds, but he says, he used the phrase Dark Ages. I prefer the term Middle Ages. Dark Ages. Was there tend to be illiteracy? Yes. Was the Bible not available in one's language? Correct. Bibles were often chained up here because they were expensive. There was no printing press. It was very costly to make a Bible. Yes, the established church felt that if you read the Bible in your language, you would probably misunderstand it. So that's why it's not right that you have the Bible in your language. Yes, but the Middle Ages had a lot of good theology going on. It wasn't like this totally dark thing. So the phrase Dark Ages is not quite the phrase to use. But the stinging point was that, sure, there was some pushback if you didn't agree with the church, and we never have that today, of course, the evangelicalism where, you don't line up with the popular view. But he says there was a lot of oppression against people who didn't believe the same things in church. People started getting mad about that, and by the time the Renaissance came around, it was acceptable for society to believe in something other than God. Yeah, but that also came about through the Enlightenment with its reliance upon science and naturalism. So the anti-supernatural aspect of that where, why do you need, when I run an atheist says, if there is an explanation that you don't need to use God, then you should use that. Yes, no. They counter with all the time of God of the gaps, they call it. You cannot explain it, you cannot understand it, so to fill in that gap, you stick God in. No, that's not quite totally accurate. You may think that's what we think, and yes, I met Christians who kind of do think that because they want to keep things very, 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 very simple. I just want to have faith. I don't want to think about all this stuff. I don't need to know about God's attributes and His nature and all that. I just believe. Yeah. So you have a half point there, but what happens many times is a worldview has good aspects. It's then taken and ran with. Like he says, the free thought movement that resulted. As an example, Mark Twain was part of this movement, and I like Mark Twain's writings, most of them. But he was definitely in that, because Mark Twain is said that, he said, let's back get his quote right, he said, faith is believing what you know ain't true. That's his image of what religious faith is. And that is not biblical faith. That's called fideism. It's rampant in the evangelical church today, but that's not what Scripture teaches. You often hear phrases like, just have faith, or believe more. Someone told me, when I confess I struggle with swearing when I get mad at mechanical things. They said I went through 3 starters in my car that way because I kept losing my temper. And they said, well, you just don't believe enough. But that's a side issue we talked about before. Let's continue. Secular humanism. So what you have is, in the 20th century, scientists, philosophers got together to organize their humanistic thinking. We're secular humanism. In 1933, they wrote the document, the Humanist Manifesto. And then in 73, they revised it, called the Human Manifesto 2. And I have read this. I was required to read these. And I'd just like to quote something out of it. It said, and quote, we affirm, secular humanists, we affirm that moral values derive their source from human experience. Ethics is autonomous. Just a minute. Is autonomous and situational, needing no theology or ideological sanctions. Ethics stem from human need and interest. To deny this distorts the whole basis of life. Human life has meaning because we create and develop our futures. End quote. This is meant to be laudable, but it is utterly terrifying. Utterly terrifying. Oh, that's kind of extreme. Yes, okay, so sometimes I use a little dramatics when I teach. Yes, I know, but why do I say terrifying? Ethics is autonomous. What do they mean? Autonomous. You know what autonomous, auto, and all that means? It means in of itself. It means ethics is not dependent upon a supernatural being to tell you what right and wrong is. We tell ourselves what right and wrong is, and that's based on the situation. Go. Yes, ethics can be situational in the sense that doctors have right and wrong, and you working in Home Depot wouldn't run into those situations. Yes, but they mean situational as in whatever situation in that determines what is right and wrong. And Christianity holds no, we hold to theistic ethics. What is theistic ethics? That what is right and wrong applies everywhere and comes to us through communication from God. It's not that God picks and chooses what he calls right and wrong. He like has a dartboard up there. Oh, rape is wrong today. Yeah, okay, let's make rape wrong. Write that down. No, it comes from his nature. So God is not arbitrary. It comes out of his nature what right and wrong is. Okay? So ethics stem from human need. Human need. Okay? In history, you can almost never go wrong by referring, as a bad example of right and wrong, referring to who? Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot. Human need. Stalin killed, was it hundreds of thousands, millions in his 5-year plans? Too bad. Too bad. That's what he felt. It was necessary for the good of the state. Ouch. Terrifying. Hitler. We need to eradicate these people for the good of the future glorious reign. Ouch. Terrifying. Utterly terrifying what that means. The secular humanist doesn't go to God for answers. Oh, well, of course, because they usually don't believe there is a God. But even more than that, they believe that humans, we are sufficient to determine. And in a way, they're right in the sense that we can figure out things. We are not totally passive as Christians where, I can't do anything. Oh Lord, show me thou thy way. Which cereal shall I eat this morning? And I don't mean to be mocking, but I know Christians who literally said God told them what to wear in the morning, what to eat for breakfast. That's not real Christianity. Could God do that? Yes. Might there be times that be appropriate? Sure. But not the mindset that I am totally incapable of anything. Oh Lord, no, he gave us a mind to use. As parents, do we treat our children that way? Oh, you can't be responsible for anything because God has to do everything. So don't study for your tests because it's totally God. Don't clean your room, don't be responsible. So I adopted, and I asked a lot of people because I adopted when my children were 9 and 10. So one day, my life was peaceful, orderly, calm, and the next day, utter chaos. And I'm not over-dramatizing, it was chaos. I was thinking, I'm a dad now. I'm responsible for these little people. I have to make sure they get fed, I have to pay the bills, I have to hold court. This was the worst thing at all to me as a brand new dad. What do I say? How do I figure out who did what? And so I would ask a lot of my friends. And one guy said he would say to his son, yes, I did not specifically say on this issue. Here's the part I like. He said, you know me. What would I say about that? You know me. Right? You know me. So yes, we do go. In fact, Scripture says in a multitude of counselors, there's value, yes. But the thing is, secular humanism says, this is the stopping point. You just ask fellow humans and then you stop. You don't have to go to this great guy in the sky. No, we have enough answers. Not always. What do I have for note 4? I covered that. Okay, so secular humanists try to use science to answer all their problems. They went to individual humans in general to thrive and grow. They are searching for objective truth. What? I read this, I thought, what? Well, from their standpoint, they believe they can find objective truth in science. We've been all over this objective truth, so that's another series. But I responded to atheists saying, science is good. It does provide a lot of iron. I love technology and science. I have no desire to live back in the 1600s, scooping manure into the fields. No desire. It's bad enough I got to clean up the dog poo in my yard. I don't say that in church, but yes, I love technology. I remember, if you're a young person, grab the seat, don't scream in horror. When TVs did not have a remote, you had to get up and change the channel, and there was 3 channels, and one was public TV. So you had 3 channels, and you had to click this thing. Once as a young person, I took my father had a rotisserie. It was a rotisserie thing for his barbecue. He didn't use it. I actually mounted it on the TV in my room with a cord, and I could time it laying in bed so I didn't have to get up and change the channel. Some call that lazy. I call it innovative. But I like playing in TV. So I'm in hotel rooms when I go on trips flying, and there's nothing on TV. So I'll lay there and go through the channels literally hundreds of times in an hour because something might change. So I'm sitting there, click, 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 click. I like that. Oh, my point. But I would say to atheists, science can tell you how to make an atom bomb, but it cannot tell you whether it's right to use an atom bomb. And I had a guy saying, no, that's not true. Science can tell us when it's right. I says, no, science cannot tell you. Science tells you how things work. It doesn't tell you whether it's morally right, whether there is a truth behind using that atom bomb or not, and many other things. So secular humanists also are searching for a good code of ethics to follow. Now this kind of I found is surprising reactions in the church. What? I thought they were like atheistic. They just want to live horribly, randomly, do whatever they want morally. This is kind of an over-exaggerated people. Actually, in my experience, I've met non-religious people who were better morally than Christians in the church. Who were more honest and upfront. I gotta say, you don't have to believe in God to be a moral person. That is not the argument. The argument is, as an atheist, are you justified in believing in morals? No, you are not. What? I'm offended. You're saying I'm a bad, immoral person. No, I didn't say that. What I'm saying is, philosophically, an atheist has no ground for objective morals. Literally, in their view, they are nothing but an animal. Do we arrest the lion for killing the antelope? Not yet. We may want to make him be a vegetarian. And, and if you're a young earther or whatever, you can argue that, they originally created not eating meat. We could go into that, but we're not going to. But animals act like animals. So if you are just a higher evolved animal, justification-wise, why are you condemned for doing what animals do and being a predator on another person? Only with the theistic worldview can there be a saying that, no, this is wrong. I don't care what the courts say. I don't care what the multitude is doing. I don't care what culture says is right. We hold that God communicates to us that there is a right and a wrong, irregardless if it's popular. So, Yes, so if you're a secular humanist, then how are you going to find what's good? A good code of ethics. Sometimes practical things are good. I'm trying to think of one. What popped in my mind is everybody obeying the traffic rules. Is that morality? I guess in a sense, but I can't keep up an example right now. But ultimately, beyond pragmatics, what is good and right still is important to find out. We need that. So where do they usually find it? Frank Turek says they steal from God. So they want their cake and eat it too. They want morality, mostly, but they don't want to acknowledge that it comes from a theistic God source. They want you to be honest in dealings. You know, C.S. Lewis talked about this. You know, don't we want fudging, mercy on the rules when it comes to us, but someone else, oh boy, they better hold the line. Oh, you didn't pay me. You didn't pay me what I'm due. Oh, that's stealing. You know, but hey.
The Bible says the Lord's Prayer says something. The word prayer, you know, as we, forgive others as we forgive us.
Right. It's a reciprocal covenant in a way, or consequence of reciprocal action. In other words,
Forgive us as we
you
forgive those.
want to be forgiven.
So forgive us as we trespass.
Yes. If you want to be forgiven, shouldn't you be forgiving? This is what God in the book of Hezekiah, that's a joke, says, the holy 2x4, I call it. God, to me in my mind, said, you want mercy from me, Kevin, but you treat your wife harshly.
That's karma.
Karma, no. Karma is actually going to come up in Buddhism.
That's putting good into the system so that we get good out of the system. See, I do to other people because I want them to do to me. That borders on karma. I do good to other people. I do good to other people because Jesus died for me so that I could lay down my life for other people.
Yes.
Sacrificial love is the heart of Christianity. Not doing good to other people so they'll treat you well.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So, in one sense, it's narcissistic. I'm only being good to you so I get good back. No, that's not what I'm saying. But Frank Turek, Stealing from God, is a good book. I recommend you get it. It helps clarify, like Sam Harris says, we don't need God to be good. We can just use human flourishing to determine right and wrong. And I say, who determines what is human flourishing? Like my example, Hitler, his society, flourished. It was very flourishing for a select group, and the other group, it wasn't flourishing. So that standard. So anyways, it continues, like I said, God is not involved. This is very important. God is not involved. So how does secular humanism look like Christianity? Well, they're trying to make the world a better place. This also sometimes is surprising to Christians in the church that not every non-religious person is out to destroy the world. Actually, many of them want the world to be a better place. It's just their cognitive faculties, their way of perceiving what a better place is skewed. So God transforms our thinking to begin to understand what is the true reality, true right and wrong, true better way on things. What's that?
We don't have the foresight We don't have the foresight.
Well, but we do have foresight. We do have that ability.
Not God's foresight.
Not to the level of God, but we are made in His image, so He has given us the ability to have. Do you want me as your airline pilot not to have foresight into
No,
what's
I
going to
understand we
happen?
have foresight, but we don't have, we are babies, like little ants compared to God. We have nothing compared to God. God is.
I agree with your juxtaposition. Did I got that word right? I agree with that, but in the sense, I wouldn't use the word nothing. I still believe that we are given a great capability of things. It's just the sin nature has skewed it. And then, of course, humans are limited. So we do have limitations, but we have great potential. You look at Rembrandt, you look at Pascal and mathematics. Brilliant men and women. So to me, this comes from God's gifting. Some people are just brilliant. And you know, like Einstein, Stephen Hawking said, the man could think back 10 pages of complex mathematics and go, oh, I made a mistake there. That's brilliant. I can't even do math in my checkbook right. You know, it doesn't work out again. Money! I get mad, you know, I can't make the numbers match. Math is not my thing. I was going to say, it's somewhere in the Bible, thou shalt not do with math, it be evil. No, that's a joke, but I'm an English guy, I was never a math guy. But how does secular humanism differ from Christianity? The denial of God. That's basically it. The buck stops here to them with humanism, human people. So, I already mentioned their text, the Humanist Manifesto 1 and 2. They often, he says, attend Unitarian and Universalist churches. Why? Because they tend to be so inclusive theologically that anything goes. Now, I don't want to make profound declarations because I haven't studied beyond a certain level, but Unitarian Universalist was actually two groups combined back in the, I can't remember. They held different views and they combined. In fact, there's one in town over by my bank. He says many secular humanists believe the Bible is the number one thing keeping women from getting their rights today. The paternalistic oppression of women. Moving right along. They believe that religion hurts people. This is a very common thing today. Christianity is now viewed as something harmful and bad for culture, both as a whole and individually. People will say, I'm a sinner. I'm separated from God because of what I've done. How can you be so mean to me? That's so harmful. You were hurting me by telling me that. My response is, if I was a doctor and you had terminal cancer and I didn't tell you the truth about what is happening to you, what you really are, wouldn't that be harmful? But the belief is that religion is mean and oppressive and paternalistic, and we would be better off without it. Who are some famous people? You can tell this is dated. Albert Einstein, second, Isaac Asimov, the author. Good books. Enjoyed his books, but he's definitely Gloria Steinem, in the 60s, the feminist organizer. Marlon Brando, Helen Keller, he said. Helen Keller? Didn't know. So, What is the trick? The trick is his suggestions to responding to them. He says humanists change their concept of truth whenever they find out some new piece of information. It's never the same. Does science do that with theories and laws? Yes, and rightly so. Rightly so. But truth, objective, ultimate truth, is not going to change. Does that mean that theology should be stagnant and never update? No. I am almost, not totally, almost modalist, and that came about through progressive, I forget the year Mullen came about, but I don't see the problem with theology updating on non-essential issues. But the core issues, was Jesus born of a virgin? Is he divine? Is he part of the Godhead? Is he fully man? These things should not change. They have been revealed to us. What else? Who is to say that people aren't just making the stuff up as they go along? And I'd say this is a good question to ask a secular humanist. How do you know the difference between truth changing and you're just changing it to suit your needs? How do you know that difference? That's a good question. I love questions. I keep saying this. I love questions because they're not as confrontational. You're just changing things so you can have it your way.
Here's your reference. Luis de Molina died in 1600.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Yes. If you are curious what Molinism is, Molinism has an extreme amount, I think, of explanatory power. And we could have a class on that one time, but we won't go down that rabbit trail. But it's interesting. If you enjoy the debate between in sovereignty issues, how does this all work out with our free will and all? This is a great thing to discuss, but not at this time. He says that secular humanists are really quick to give people a list of rules to live by, ways to do things, but they're basing it on people who change. In order to give someone absolute, objective rules on stuff, you've got to base your rules on something absolute. I would say objective. And we in Christianity hold the only totally person who has complete objective knowledge. It's not biased, it's not skewed, it's not deficient in any ways, is God. Is God. And I would say that's where logic comes from, too. It isn't just for the old and new Mr. Spock. It's also something that we use every day, and I would contend we don't even know we're using logic. I tried to use logic as a new dad with my daughters, and I failed miserably. I thought, I said once, you said this, but you did that. Don't you see how that's, what you're doing is it's contradicting itself? No! I didn't know anything as a dad. I was like, no. And my wife would just tap me on the shoulder and say, I'll take care of this. No! That was my wife's logic on everything. No! Anyways, let's move on from secularism. I get paid to talk. Secular humanism to existentialism. Existential, that sounds so like mystical and existentialism. What is existentialism? We only get through the definition. Existentialism is a way of thinking We're doing a series on ways of thinking. Oh, this is surprising, right? Way of thinking that stresses living over knowing, willing over thinking, the concrete over the absolute, abstract, dynamic over static, love over law. Don't let your eyes roll back in your head. I'm going to try and summarize this. Personal over propositional, subjective over objective. We just talked about objective thing, right? So subjective over objective. At its heart, existentialism is the belief that existence has precedence over essence. It runs through all their thinking. Here's kind of a summary. If you're living, you're finding or even creating meaning. Meaning comes just by living. Experience is over reason. So it's very experiential. One person I knew would accuse Pentecostals and Charismatic living by their feelings. They're just living by their feelings. I kept saying, no, this is not correct. They emphasize experience, the experience of God. Blackaby wrote a whole series of books called Experiencing God. So existentialism is about the experience of living, not so much the thinking part and the rule part and all that stuff. So key existential thinking. How many of you have heard of Nietzsche? Friedrich Nietzsche. Yes, Friedrich Nietzsche. And I think we're going to stop there, but if you ever heard the phrase God is dead, this does not come from Nietzsche, but he used it, and I think it's fascinating what he's done with it, but it does amplify this existential thinking. We're going to pick that up next time with Friedrich Nietzsche, and how his prediction came sadly, horribly true for humanity. Father, we thank you. I always wrestle with this stuff I don't want it to be boring or just, this is intellectual stuff that really I have no use for. But Lord, in the end, we know that ideas have consequences. And ideas either help lead us to you or they block us from coming to you. Lord, I pray that we would be kind, we would be prudent, but we would not shilly-shally when we discuss these things with those who are so far from you. Thank you, Jesus.